Howdy y'all, welcome back to another Reflections video. I'm Chip of the Quarter Life Burnouts, and I've been feeling a little bit like a kid again. Y'all remember back when you were a kid and you'd get a game and play it for hours on end, and when you weren't playing you'd be thinking about it? You'd be in class and just daydreaming about the game and the world you're exploring, doodling in the margins of your notebook, or in my case on the back of your pop quizzes. You'd be thinking about all the things you were going to do in that game once you got home. I know for me it was Gen 2 through 4 Pokemon, and it had a real grip hold on me. But I also recall thinking like this for SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, and a lot of other games of that era, like Twilight Princess or Wind Waker. Going into high school, I thought about Halo ODST and Halo Reach, or all the clutch moments my friends and I had in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I always had a game that I was constantly thinking about when I wasn't playing it. Once I was 18 and off to college, that spark slowly started to fade away. It shifted away from me thinking constantly about the games I was playing into the games I wish I could be playing. I didn't really have money to buy games, and the days of getting video games for birthday and Christmas presents were just over. So if I wasn't replaying a game that I already had, I was kinda shit out of luck. I wasn't very tech savvy when I was younger, so I didn't really know how to emulate games or where to download ROMs without giving my laptop LimeWire disease. So I just started watching Let's Plays and just imagining how fun it would be to play the games other people seem to be enjoying so much. This was kind of the trend for a few years. I would do my best to save up some money, and I'd occasionally buy a new game, or a used one that was just new to me. But I noticed I didn't have the same attachment to these games that I had to others as a youth. I don't know how much of this was just not being in a stage of life where I was into gaming, or just not picking games I vibed with as much, or just the games of that particular time period just not being made for me. But most likely it was how guilty I would feel playing a game instead of finishing my schoolwork. It felt like it took every ounce of my effort just to be an average student in college, or at least what I perceived to be average. I never felt quite as mentally equipped as my peers, although my GPA at least looked kinda good. I really didn't play that many video games that resonated with me from about 2012 through 2021. There were a few standouts and some games I set aside knowing I just needed the time to properly appreciate them, like Breath of the Wild for instance. I've thought about making a proper video about the handful of games which brought me back to the hobby, so I'm not going to go too in depth here, but I'm going to give a few quick shoutouts here. I think the first game in that time span that really made me realize I wasn't done with this hobby was Grow Home. Aside from all the colors and the whimsy of it all, this isn't really the type of game that I'd normally go for. I never really got into the quirky physics games of that era, but I saw this was a relatively short game and thought maybe my problem was every game coming out was over 30 hours long, and all of them just kind of felt like too much of a commitment. I ended up 100%ing the game within 2 days and just couldn't stop thinking about how much fun I had in a previous play session when I was off going to class or doing some homework. A few years later, I kept seeing screenshots from a game called A Short Hike and figured I would give that game a shot. I had just recently broken up with a girl I had been dating for a long time and was needing a bit of a return to form. Between the sudden life change and being beat down in my master's program, I just needed something simple and lighthearted, and man did this game do it for me. Just like Grow Home, I ended up doing everything you can do in the game, although it only took me about 4 or 5 in-game hours spread across 2 play sessions. I actually remember I almost missed going to church because I was so immersed in this game and ended up being a bit too distracted while I was there just thinking about how brilliant that game was. Monster Hunter World was a game I really wanted to play, but knew would just be too much of a time sink remembering my time with 4 Ultimate and Generations on the 3DS. I didn't really play my PS4, so I didn't get the game until it was on Steam, and even then I waited for a steep discount. I remember Extra Shoddy already had the game on PC and was much further along, so we started playing and I ended up convincing my grad school buddy to get a copy too. We ended up playing the entirety of the campaign co-op and just having an unbelievable time. There are just so many memories and stories from this game, and it was the first time since my high school days playing Halo Reach and Modern Warfare 2 on Xbox 360 where I got really into the experience and beauty of online multiplayer gaming. During COVID, I started a PhD program, which I only made it a year into and was driven just absolutely mad by everything being online in what should have been a very hands-on program. But while I was getting ramped up on my research, I decided to pick up Breath of the Wild again and turn off all the HUD elements for guiding my exploration, and I will tell you, this transformed the game from what was a fun game that I felt didn't really hold a candle to the traditional games, to becoming what might have possibly been my favorite game up until the sequel released. I ended up having to put the game down when Monster Hunter Rise released, but with the full knowledge I would come back and finish the game later. I think the weirdest experience I had was playing Pokemon Legends Arceus. I, to this day, swear that this is a bad video game, and this was my final attempt at giving modern Pokemon a fair shake. Generation 4 Pokemon may go down as my favorite generation. I haven't fully decided that, but honestly I kind of believe it in my heart. And some of that adoration comes from the lore they baked into those games. Being able to read about the history of the world in Sinnoh in books and having the legends be the creators of the universe was just so incredible, and I was so excited to have a game that explored that lore. Or at least that's what I thought this game was going to be. I ended up hate playing all the way through the campaign, struggling to find a single element of the game I could honestly say I liked. It felt so half-baked, and it irritated me to no end that this was the game that we were given. But I just couldn't put it down until I beat Cynthia. It is Cynthia, don't pretend it's anything else. I honestly think the only reason I played all the way through the game was so that people couldn't use that lame-ass excuse of, well, you didn't play enough to have an opinion that it's a bad game. With having seen all that game had to quote-unquote offer, this game is trash, but I'd be lying if I didn't at least give it some credit for having me commit to completing a decently long game at the time. I think the last game that was in this time period was returning to Breath of the Wild to have it completed before the release of Tears of the Kingdom. My oldest daughter was a newborn, and she was born just a few months before the release of Tears of the Kingdom. I live in a part of Texas that gets a ton of wind and storms throughout the spring, and so between having an infant that napped a lot and the weather not wanting me to be outside, I spent a lot of my free time just lying on the couch holding my daughter while exploring the newest iteration of Hyrule. My rule for the open world Zelda games, as mentioned before, is to turn off the minimap and all the navigation aiding features and just explore the world through context clues. It really slows you down in these types of games, and it just lets your curiosity be the guide. It unironically became the journey is the reward meme for me. I remember finishing Breath of the Wild a couple weeks before the release of Tears of the Kingdom and just dying to play that game. My mother-in-law happened to be coming to town to babysit our daughter on the day of the release, and I remember that evening just being her asking me all sorts of questions while watching me play the game as I giddily played into the wee hours of the night, an empty Domino's pizza box on the side table, accompanied by a few empty beer bottles. I ended up needing to take a hiatus after getting about 75% of the way through the game, once free time became harder to come by and our daughter got a bit more mobile. But even now, 3 years later, I get pangs of desire to play that game whenever I hear rain outside or hear our wind chimes clanging a bit louder than usual. Here I am, 3 years later, still daydreaming about it and having vivid thoughts of returning to the world to continue this adventure. Now, why am I sharing all this? Because there's been a new game that's been creeping into my brain outside of gaming hours. I've had a copy of Ghost of Tsushima for the PS5 that I got on a steep sale a while ago that I finally decided to just unwrap and start playing. I've always heard good things about this game, but just wanted to wait till I was in the mood to invest myself in this world. If it's an open world game, I do try to play with as little navigation elements as possible, which means there's a lot more of a mental investment in playing these kinds of games. I'm only a few hours into the game, so I don't want to give too much judgment, positive or negative yet. This isn't intended to be a review of the game, but rather just discuss how it's felt playing a relatively recent AAA game and just finding it creeping into my mind throughout the day when not playing. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm obsessed with the game, and there's definitely a lot of AAA tropes I'm seeing that just take me out of the immersion. But what's really bringing me back is that old world aesthetic of the game. It feels like a world that I can just get lost in and explore and actually get a sense of what life in this era would have been like, albeit through a lens of an ongoing war ravaging the island. But these visions of riding through that field of swaying grass, just dipping into some hot springs, or even just staring out at the beautiful vistas while climbing up to a shrine are slowly trickling into my brain throughout the day. The way that the wind sweeps up all the leaves on the ground, and the amount of vivid colors in what is an otherwise dark story are just breathtaking. Even how, at times, the game has an almost brushstroke feeling to it all when it's in motion. It all helps me look past all the clearly marked handholds for climbing, the static NPCs espousing dialogue in the pre-mission cutscenes, or the GTA Assassin's Creed style missions where you meet a character somewhere just to have an exposition dump while traversing to where the mission actually is. I'll tell you, I wasn't sure if I would actually like this game or not, even after watching a bunch of reviews and being into the setting of Japan. But the moment I knew I'd be into this game was the cutscene where Jin recovers his sword just before fighting a Mongol.
I'm not her samurai.
There's just something about that scene that hyped me up to begin this journey. Each time I turn on my PS5 to play, I find myself enjoying the game just a little bit more. I've gotten to play a few side missions, and the couple I've played feel much more thought out than your typical gaming side quests. Hell, I played one last night where you learn there's a special technique that makes you strike as quick as lightning, and this dangerous man is on the hunt to learn how to use this technique, and you have to stop him. And although the mission structure is pretty formulaic and going from point to point, killing some enemies and talking to NPCs, leading up to a final bout with the big bad, it's all dressed up in the player being asked to track horse prints in the mud, search for trees with white leaves on them, and as you approach the final area of the side quest, thunderstorms begin to roll in and lightning strikes clash all around you. I don't know, I just found myself getting all wrapped up in what this game is trying to do, and with each playthrough getting more and more excited to see what's next. It honestly feels like this was a love letter from the developers to samurai movies, and I'm finding I'm forgiving the handful of boardroom game design decisions that I'm coming across as I continue into this game. I don't know, with all the doom and gloom surrounding the current era of gaming and seeing all the live service games taking over the gaming cultural zeitgeist and the ever-increasing expense of the hobby, it's nice feeling like I can find plenty of games that make me feel like a kid again. Last year, I found myself in awe over a 20-year-old game in Final Fantasy X. Before that, it was a new release for the time in Tears of the Kingdom. And now it's what some people might have considered to be the game of the year a handful of years ago. I definitely don't have the luxury of countless hours to play games anymore, and Lord knows I'm lucky to have even a couple uninterrupted hours. But I'm just thankful to feel like I didn't grow into the jaded old man that thinks video games are for children like my mother always said I would. There were definitely a fair number of years I was worried I was heading in that direction. Anyways, I think that's where I'm at this week. Thankful to be able to find joy in the little things like playing some good old video games. Let me know down below if you've had any games bring back that childlike joy, and why is it an old Pokemon game you decided to replay? I'm always looking for some good as hell recommendations, so let me know. I've got a Pokemon Crystal video I'm working on, and I'll hopefully have that out in a few weeks. And I'll have these reflection style videos out weekly. Subscribe to join in on the fun, it really helps the channel out. Like the video if you liked it, ignore all buttons if you didn't. And until next time, keep it tuned in.